Welcome into the Solo Shot Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Dom Manna. Happy Solo Shot Saturday, everybody. I am repping my Chicago Cubs shirt today because the Cubs have finally made a splash this offseason. It looked like after an amazing start to the 2023 baseball season, where they were competitive more than a lot of people expected them to be, that they were just ramping up to being the Cubs again, to trying to be relevant, to wanting to win games, not making big moves at the trade deadline to sell. They actually bought a few players. And then this offseason, it's been kind of crickets. They went out there and their biggest signing so far has been Craig Counsell, their new manager who they sniped from the Milwaukee Brewers in division. And as much as I liked that move, the fact that they kind of just sat there, they were in on Shohei Ohtani. They had discussions with Yamamoto as well, the two big fish in the market, but they still haven't made any moves. Cody Bellinger was a big hitter in their lineup last season. He's a free agent. Marcus Stroman, who was their ace for the first half of the season last year, has now signed elsewhere. And the Cubs finally make a deal signing Shota Imanaga, the number 2 Japanese free agent, the left-hander who, although he does not have the accomplishments or the age factor that Yamamoto had as a free agent to make him appealing, he has very nasty stuff that I expect to be able to work as a number 3, a number 4, a number 5 starter. And when you think about just the contract that Yamamoto got, the richest pitcher contract in Major League history, when you look at Shota Imanaga's deal, he, I think, signed for way less than people were expecting him to. So Imanaga's contract with the Cubs ended up being a really solid price, I think, for Chicago, when people were expecting him to get over $100 million, and it did not cost them even close to that. So his contract with the Cubs was 4 years and $53 million. There is a 5th-year option to get it to 80, which is more than he was originally expected to sign. I think that people were expecting Yamamoto to be in the $200 million range and Imanaga to be in the 75-ish max. And then there was talks that, well, Yamamoto got all the way up to 325. Imanaga's at least going to get 100, but he doesn't have the top of the rotation stuff. Getting a starting pitcher who can give you quality innings, has nasty stuff, especially from the left side. John Smoltz has said this for years. If you are left-handed and have a pulse, you can have a job in the big leagues, because just the way the ball comes in is so different and effective against certain guys. There's some guys that just can't hit the arm angles that left-handed pitchers are able to create. And Imanaga, I think, will be a absolute value at his price tag. We talked about the pitching market getting crazy last week, and you see the Reds signing Frankie Montas to 1 year, $16 million after pitching 3 innings last year. Shota Imanaga pitched in the World Baseball Classic, pitched a full season over in Japan, and then he comes over here, and if they pick up that 5th-year option, it's $16 million a year for 5 years of Imanaga. That AAV, give me the guy that hasn't pitched in the big leagues over Montas, who has shown flashes a few years back now, but isn't quite the value that Imanaga is. And I talked about, with the pitchers market, how we are at a point where teams are going to have to look for trades. Pitching is super expensive, and the best way to do it is to give up prospects and go out there and get a pitcher on the trade market. And we've had a fun offseason in terms of trades. There was Juan Soto to the Yankees, which feels like forever ago. Tyler Glasnow went to the Dodgers. And of course, I talked last week in episode 41, very fittingly so, Chris Sale getting dealt to the Atlanta Braves. So 3 contenders, if you'd like to call them all that, went out there and traded for a very good player. There's a lot of pitchers that have been rumored to be traded or talked about in trades so far this offseason. There are guys who are controllable for multiple years, like a Dylan Cease or a Jesus Luzardo. There are guys who are straight up rentals, like Corbin Burns. And I think now that we have guys like Imanaga and Marcus Stroman, who we'll get into in just a second, signing relatively reasonable contracts, this trade market might finally get reasonable, because there was talk that the Chicago White Sox were looking for the best position player in your farm system plus a arm that has a chance to be a starter. And that's a very hefty price to pay for 2 years of Dylan Cease. He's a Scott Boras client. He's unlikely to sign an extension unless you blow him away with the money. And he's a guy that's coming off the worst year of his young career. Then you go to guys like Jesus Luzardo, who just agreed in arbitration with the Marlins for $5 million for this year. Like I said, Frankie Montas and Imanaga are going to be getting in the teens. And it's just unbelievable to see how these pitchers are being valued, how innings are being valued in this new pitch clock era, how many injured pitchers I think are influencing what these pitchers are valued at in getting traded for. And it's almost feeling like the quarterback position in the NFL, where you just need quality depth. You saw it in the NFL this season. So many teams starting quarterbacks went down with injuries, and backup quarterbacks had to step in. Some did really well and led their team to the postseason, and some teams' seasons just fizzled apart. So having pitching depth is so vital, especially in this pitching world. And if the playoffs from last season were a showcase, you need to have at least 2 guys that can eat innings for you, quality workhorse innings, 2 guys at the top of your rotation, and supplement them with another 1 or 2 guys that can give you a quality start. So teams need pitching depth. There's going to be more injuries this season. There's going to be guys coming back from injuries. There's going to be trades, but I'm excited to see what goes on. A trade that I didn't cover last week was the San Francisco Giants acquiring former AL Cy Young winner Robbie Ray from the Seattle Mariners for Mitch Haniger and Desclafani, the pitcher, who had a decent 2023. He pitched more than Robbie Ray did. He was injured almost the entire season. But Mitch Haniger goes back to Seattle, where I'm sure that fan base is really happy to see him again. He was a fan favorite over there. And Robbie Ray, the San Francisco Giants, after missing out on all these top free agents, they go out there and they trade. Granted, they're not paying all the money, but for one of the riskiest contracts in Major League Baseball, to get a guy that they believe that they can get back to around his Cy Young form. And it's going to be interesting to see how Robbie Ray rehabs in a new spot, how he goes out there and pitches every 5th day for the Giants. And if the Giants are done adding pitching, I would hope not. I would hope that they want at least one more starting pitcher in that rotation, and that Robbie Ray isn't the consolation prize for missing out on Yamamoto. But the trade market will continue to heat up. And I expect, whether it's little deals that have been going on here in the major leagues, there is just so many guys that I think are in spots that they could be moved, whether it's the Dodgers, who traded their number 2 prospect, Michael Busch, and reliever Yency Almonte, to the Cubs for Jackson Ferris and Zaire Hope. So that was just a move to get Michael Busch off their 40-man roster to open up spots for the guys that they've gotten this offseason, Glasnow, Yamamoto, Ohtani, and Teoscar Hernandez, who they blew everyone out of the water on, giving him $23 million for 1 year. The St. Louis Cardinals got former All-Star reliever Andrew Kitteridge from the Rays for Richard Palacios, who is a guy who's played infield and outfield. I think the Rays will use his versatility pretty well. And little moves like Estevan Florial, another 40-man dump to Cleveland for Cody Morris, who has pitched as a starter and a reliever for the Yanks. There's just a bunch of little moves that are happening. But I'm happy to see that instead of waiting for these big moves, which they will come, there are also little transactions happening, because these transactions with teams interacting and building those relationships, building those bridges, it makes it easier for the big trades to happen later. And the example that immediately comes to mind with this is seeing two teams make a small trade to then months later make the bigger trade. So we just want to talk, hey, I don't want to move this big fish right now. Okay, well, what can we do for this guy? Let them win the small deal and then come back and try to win the big fish. That is just what I think is going to happen with this trade market, and it's been really fun to keep up with all the rumors, because this offseason has arguably been the absolute worst in terms of insiders being correct. There's been a lot of misinformation. There's been a lot of bait and switch. There's been a lot of people that just straight up don't have the right story. And it has been really tough as a consumer to keep up with what's going on in the trade market. Some of these prices that are reported might be legit. Some of these prices that are being reported might not be. Depends on who's giving the information, and things that are going to be really fun to watch going forward. But like I said, former Cubs ace Marcus Stroman signed with the New York Yankees, $37 million for 2 years. I think it was a great value for the Yankees. And this is a guy, the only bad thing you can say about him is that in his limited starts at Yankee Stadium, mostly coming as a Blue Jay in the AL East, he has an ERA of over 11. Not great. It is a bandbox. They built it for home runs and offense. But Marcus Stroman gives the Yankees one thing that they've been desperately searching for, and that is innings. Over the last 3 seasons, he has pitched over 450 innings. And this is a guy, when you look at your rotation behind Garrett Cole, who's a future Hall of Famer, Carlos Rodon barely pitched last year after signing a big contract. Nestor Cortez had injuries and took a severe step back after his first All-Star breakout season in 2022. And they got guys like Clark Schmidt, who are vying for that last starter spot. They missed out on Yamamoto. They're still reportedly in the market for a Snell or a Montgomery. I don't expect them to get either, especially with the Stroman move, but getting a guy that can come in there as your number 2, number 3, and give you quality innings in that American League East, which is just an absolute dogfight. I really like the move. And for Marcus Stroman, he never wanted to leave New York. He's a New York native. He went home, and after pitching for the Mets for a very limited time, that was a mixed bag of production. He was really happy to have the opportunity to go home after opting out of his deal with Chicago. He thought he was going to get really big money. He ended up faltering in the second half of 2023, and I think costing himself one of those big contracts. But 2 years pitching in New York, if you do well, you will get paid elsewhere. So congratulations to Marcus Stroman. Congratulations to the Yankees. This is another piece in the arsenal you need to compete in this American League East. So here at the Solo Shot Sports Podcast, we like to throw it back down the third base line to this day in sports history, whether it be a moment, an event, and talk about the stories of this great America's pastime. There was a lot of moments in January 13th history that I thought could be worth talking about. But the more I thought about it, I've talked about the Hall of Fame a lot recently. We're going to have new Hall of Famers announced this Sunday, tomorrow, January 14th. They're going to announce who the new Hall of Famers are through the Baseball Writers Association of America ballot. Hank Aaron and Frank Robinson got elected on this day in 1982, and they're two of the greatest players of all time. I've highlighted both of them on this show before. You look at some trades. Garrett Cole got traded to the Astros for Joe Musgrove and a few other pieces in 2018, which is bordering on, is it too soon to throw it back to that? Garrett Cole was great for the Astros, and that was a fun trade. But the thing that really stuck out to me was actually a retirement. And I feel like the middle of January is a weird time to announce your retirement. Usually it ends up happening right when the season's done, in the October, November range, or it ends up happening during spring training, when people are talking about baseball and covering it again. But this star decided to walk away here in January on this date in 1988. National League star first baseman Steve Garvey announced his retirement. Yes, the same Steve Garvey who was an MVP in 1974, a 10-time All-Star, helped the Dodgers win 4 pennants, including the 1981 World Series championship. And then later in his career, went to San Diego and helped a young San Diego team over the hump and got to the World Series in 1984. So Steve Garvey is a very controversial Hall of Fame case to a lot of people. The analytics community hates him because he has only 272 career home runs as a first baseman at a power position. He has 38 career WAR in a 19-year career, which is just not what you look for WAR-wise. But this is a guy who won 4 Gold Gloves at the position, was a true star of his times. Like I said, a 10-time All-Star. He won 2 All-Star MVPs. He was looked at by his peers, by the fans, by the writers at the time as one of the best players in Major League Baseball. And I know some of it, granted, is because he had the National League streak for most consecutive games played. He was the Iron Man in the National League. I think because of the era he played in, his Iron Man streak kind of got toned down and forgotten about as Cal Ripken's fame continued to grow in the 80s into the 90s, passing Lou Gehrig's mark and just ultimately making people forget that Steve Garvey was going out there and playing every day at first base with these at-bats, and a guy who in 19 seasons batted .294 for his career. This is the guy that has 2,599 hits, 1,143 runs scored, over 1,300 runs driven in, and a guy who, for his career, was 17 times better than the average hitter, a 117 career OPS plus. In his career, he had an over 100 OPS plus, way more seasons than he had below. His last season was very bad, but that was part of the reason why he walked away. He won that MVP in 1974 and actually finished second in 1978 as well for the MVP. So if Steve Garvey ended up having 2 MVP awards in his showcase, I think that the Hall of Fame would have already came knocking for the man. But the thing that really makes Steve Garvey, who, if you're being honest, just looking objectively, he's not a slam dunk Hall of Famer. He's a guy that you really have to dive into and make your own opinion on based on what you think a Hall of Famer is. His playoff stats, it's not just that he was there as an Iron Man on those Dodgers pennant winners and that Padres pennant winner as well. In 5 years of playoff baseball, 11 series, he had over 220 at-bats. And this was Steve Garvey's slash line in the postseason. A .338 average, .361 on base, and a .550 slug. Good for a .910 OPS. He had 122 total bases, 11 home runs, 31 RBIs, 75 hits. He was a postseason star. He shined in the greatest moments. He helped his teams get to the championship series and get to World Series, and in 1981 win the whole dang thing. So next time you're looking at Steve Garvey's baseball reference page, I know a lot of people will look at the WAR, they'll look at the counting stats, and those are important metrics, no doubt. But go take a peek at what Steve Garvey was doing in these playoff series. I promise you won't be disappointed. He was a guy who got even better in the postseason. The old adage with the postseason is that you hope that a guy hits as good as they do in the regular season in the postseason. But when a guy levels up their game, a la a Kurt Schilling or a Mickey Mantle, people remember that stuff. And I hope that Steve Garvey gets into the Hall of Fame someday. He's 75 years old. He just turned that in December. And I would love to see him get honored in Cooperstown while he's still with us. So baseball, Hall of Fame, please make that happen. And if you noticed last episode, home plate was called Stirring the Pot. But because of time restrictions, I kind of decided to stir the pot by just leaving the word stirring the pot on the screen and not address it too deeply. But I got time today. And I think when you look across Major League Baseball, there are some call outs to have. And I talked about the Red Sox lack of moves. I'm not going to make this a whole soapbox ranting about my favorite team. But ownership decided to not go out to winter weekend and sit in front of the fans and take their medicine for not making moves. And instead, they were just going around and saying, hey, you can have winter weekend without us. We're not going to make any moves. We're going to shed payroll. We're going to do things. And it's just amazing to see that a team that is regarded as one of the league's most valuable franchises is well under the luxury tax, is still shedding payroll, is telling free agents that they're too expensive, is going to guys that are getting offered $23 million for one season and offering them just pennies on the dollar for two. And it's really laughable. But the teams that really need the pot stirred are the teams that had good 2023s. The Red Sox were a last place team. But if you look at the Orioles, I know my buddy Will has been in the chat today, and man, they signed Craig Kimbrell. It's a great stopgap while Felix Bautista recovers from his ACL, his Tommy John surgery. And it's going to be really exciting for this Orioles team that won 100 games after losing 100 2 years ago. But you have this young core. You need to supplement it. It would be a shame if they go out there with this same rotation in 2024. They have a litany of controllable bats, both at the major league level and at the minor league level. You're not going to be able to keep them all. They're not all going to get everyday at bats. They need to pick and choose, and they need to go out there and they need to get a frontline starter. That's just the fact of the matter. And I think when you have an embarrassment of riches like the Orioles do, like the Cincinnati Reds do, and you're going out there and you're paying Frankie Montas $16 million instead of taking that $16 million and using it towards an extension offer for Corbin Burns or Jesus Luzardo or any of the names that you can go out there and get on the free market to supplement your young team, give it that true ace at the front. There's been so many times where a team has traded a very dear prospect for a pitcher, and it was that missing piece. And I think that the Orioles are in that camp. The Reds are in that camp. And I think they're just letting their fans down. They're letting their young core down by not really aggressively exploring those markets. It's great to compile depth. Like I said, with the NFL quarterback situation, you need depth, but to a point. You're not going to be able to have the best team all the way from A-ball to the big leagues. But what you can do is have a consistent pipeline of guys that their clocks come around in a positive order and build a team. So the Orioles, is very, very interesting to see what they're going to do. And to me, if they don't go out there and make a big trade sometime between now and the trade deadline, it's going to be a big mistake and a year wasted, in my opinion. I'm not saying they still can't compete. I picked them to win the World Series last year. But to me, if you're not trying to take that next step, the chances of you taking that next step are very low. The expectations are high now. People are not going to see the Orioles sneaking up on them. And as much as I like the Kyle Bradishes of the world, you need a true number one at the top of the rotation to shut down a Texas lineup early in the series and give you guys the momentum you need to win those big series in October. And also, another thing that I see is the San Francisco Giants. Yes, they went out there and they traded for Robbie Ray. Yes, they just signed Jordan Hicks to a 4-year contract and are reportedly going to make him a starting pitcher despite him being a relief pitcher for the majority of his career. The San Francisco Giants, I understand the pain of missing out on all these top free agents. But the fact that they still have not signed Blake Snell, and out of the Blake Snell finalists, they aren't even listed, is an absolute crime. This is a guy who you've seen a lot the last few years while he's been in San Diego. This is a guy where your new manager in Bob Melvin was his manager in San Diego, and you have plenty of money to spend, need a starting pitcher, and you go out there and use your money on Robbie Ray's contract instead of a healthy Blake Snell? Really? The Giants are shooting themselves in the foot at this point, and I think it's really sad for their fans. They love baseball over there in San Francisco, and those 3 championships in the early 2010s are getting further and further away. We're now a decade away from the latest championship in San Francisco. Buster Posey's been retired for quite a while. Go out there, be aggressive in the right places. Get the guys who are free. Trade for guys who will want to be there and can extend. You're not always going to get the number one fish, especially if you're not a top of the market team. These top of the market guys, they care about money. They care about winning. If they can get both, they're going to do so. And the Giants haven't shown a winning culture for the majority of the last decade. They've had some great seasons. 2021, Buster Posey's last year, was fantastic. They really fell off the wagon since then. But the Giants have had a ton of money. Their fans have been complaining about nobody who wants to sign here, but we're trying. We're offering $300+ million. And you have a 2-time Cy Young winner who should be on your doorstep as your 1A, 1B, a Logan Webb, Blake Snell rotation. Sounds really nasty to me. And instead of being aggressive on Blake Snell, they're just passing. They're like, we'd rather pay Jordan Hicks to be our 5th starter and bring in Robbie Ray and hope that he rehabs from his one really good season, which was his Cy Young season. And to me, that's just indefensible. This is how you stay out of contention for these big fish free agents. And as a Red Sox fan, I can say this because there's been times where they were in the hunt as one of the big fish hunters and they made some big signings. And there has been years where it's been hard to get people to want to come to Boston, and they've gotten scrappy veteran players together like 2013 and win the whole thing. You have to act your wage. And these Giants, they have the money, but instead of one $300 million player, Jordan Hicks was 40-something million. You sign another $40-something million player, and you sign Blake Snell for $200 million. And you get 3 players to help your team as opposed to that one $300 million fish. If you can't go to the top, do the value game on the secondary and tertiary levels. And it's just a shame that we're in a market where there are crazy demand for these pitchers, the AAV, the years, everything. And teams that just need these pitchers are taking a step back and saying, hey, if we have to march a journeyman out there every fifth day, we're going to do it. And if we have to overpay him, we'd rather do that. The pitching market is insane right now, but you have to navigate it to what you need. And the splash that the Giants need, I predicted it before the offseason started, is Blake Snell. So I don't know if it's too late. I don't know if he's already made up his mind. But the fact that the Los Angeles Angels, who lost Shohei Ohtani, who traded a lot of their future, are a finalist for Blake Snell, and the Giants are out because they got Robbie Ray and Jordan Hicks. Are you kidding me? It is just unbelievable to me. And the last thing that I kind of wanted to touch on here, while I am stirring the metaphorical pot, is the fact that the Baseball Hall of Fame will be announcing their electees tomorrow evening. And I just can't believe that there's only 4 players who have not received a vote. One, there are some guys in that ballot that got votes already publicly that did not deserve a vote. And the fact that last year, out of all the known ballots, 381, there were 46 ballots where the voter used all 10 votes. Right now, through Ryan Thibodeau and his team tracking it all, there's 156 public ballots, and 55 of them used all 10 votes. If I am blessed enough to have a vote for the Baseball Hall of Fame one day, I would try my hardest to use all 10 spots. I'm not saying that every single year there's going to be 10 deserving guys, but I would try my darnest to get there. And the fact that that's still a problem with the Baseball Hall of Fame, that there's still a lot of one and dones that shouldn't be, some guys that take forever to get in or to just miss the Hall of Fame with the 75% threshold. I'm super excited to see what the final numbers are. And that team over there at the Baseball Hall of Fame tracker, they do a great job at keeping track of everything. But all the people out there that are blessed to have a vote, take it seriously and be consistent. If you're going to check the box for one guy whose career achievements aren't even close to 3 of the boxes you didn't check, that is questionable. And a lot of the guys that are doing this aren't using all 10 votes. So there's no excuse. It's not that I only had 1 vote left and I wanted to keep this guy on the ballot. It's just straight bias in the 3rd degree, and it's actually unacceptable in my opinion. So I appreciate you all for coming to my TED Talk. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Thank you for all of you that checked it out live: Orlando, Matt, Hugo, Will, etc. Thank you to all of you that listened to this throughout your week to help keep up with what's going on in Major League Baseball. For more baseball content, feel free to check out my profile on the app formerly known as Twitter at DominicMana44. I hope you guys have a great weekend reacting to the Hall of Fame results, talking playoff football with the NFL, and just great time with your family and loved ones. I will catch you guys next Solo Shot Saturday. Peace.